Hey everyone! If you're like me, those perimenopause symptoms are driving you crazy. Well, I've got a little help for you. All you need to do is go to my midlifewithcourage.com website, and a little box is going to pop up that's going to ask you if you'd like to get my free ebook called Balancing Your Hormones. It's a short little guide with tips that you can use throughout the day, super easy, to help you balance out those hormones through the things that you do. So check it out, midlifewithcourage.com. Now let's get back to the show. You are listening to the Midlife with Courage podcast. Each week, women in midlife come for inspiration, motivation, and sometimes a little education to help them flourish after 40. Let's get started. This week, I have the pleasure of talking with Rhonda Britten. She is a life coach who has quite the life story.
And to actually even admit to myself I was afraid, because again, where I grew up, there is no fear. And, if you would have said to me, even after my parents died, "Are you afraid?" I would have looked at you like, no. If you would have asked me when I was drinking if I was scared, I would have said no,
Hmm.
because I had no understanding or relationship to those words. They weren't even in my vocabulary, right?
Yeah.
So I had to do the work of unfolding myself and really starting to get comfortable with feelings and eventually discover the feeling called fear.
Welcome back to another episode of Midlife with Courage. I am Kim Benoit, your host, and I'm so happy to have you here. I'm also very happy to have my guest with me here today. Her name is Rhonda Britten. Welcome to the podcast, Rhonda.
Thank you, Miss Kim. I'm so excited to be here
We've
with
been
another
chatting before we.
Midwesterner.
Yes,
Midwest.
another Midwesterner. We've been
Yes,
chatting
yes,
about that before we hit record. I
yes.
just love that. Yeah, so Rhonda is a master life coach. You've done reality TV, a lot of episodes, over 600 episodes of TV shows, including Starting Over, Help Me Rhonda, and Celebrity Fit Club. And you have multiple best-selling books.
That's true. It's all
Yes,
true, Kim.
it's
It's
all
all
true.
true.
Good, good. It's on the internet, and apparently it is true. So, welcome to the podcast, Rhonda.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about what you want the listeners to know about you.
Oh, well, I'm in Los Angeles, California. And, what I want the world, what I want the listeners to know, the most important thing I want them to know is that we're going to be talking about fear today, most likely,
Mhm.
and that there's nothing wrong with you. It's just fear. And so hopefully over the next, as long as we're talking today, that they start embracing the concept or believing the concept that they are not their problems, they are not their issues, they are not their character flaws, and that they are something beyond that and can live from that place.
Love it. Oh my gosh, cannot wait to get into that. Before we start, I always ask my guests if they would be willing to share a time in their life when they felt courage or courageous.
Oh gosh.
I know you have a lot.
I was going to say, I have so many stories. Wow. I'm just going to talk about now. I'm going to talk about now because I think courage is something that must be cultivated on a daily basis. My work is called Fearless Living. So instead of talking about something that is like my dark night of the soul or recovering from my parents', deaths or, being an alcoholic or any of those things, when I had to have lots of courage, when I quit drinking, I had to have lots and lots and lots of courage. Really, what we want to cultivate, what I want to cultivate is courage every day. So right now, I am working on a memoir about my dark night of the soul. I had a dark night about 15 years ago, and it lasted about 3 years. And during those 3 years, I was at the height of my career. I was just gotten off Starting Over, and that aired every day, 5 days a week for 3 years. And so I couldn't go outside without being recognized. And here I am in the middle of Vail, Colorado, having a dark night of the soul and at the height of my career. And when I was in my dark night, and I think this is true for many people in the dark night, is that you can't work. I mean, clearly you work, but you really can't in the sense of there's no creative force. You're basically like, right? And you are rethinking everything, and the rug's been pulled out from under you. And so I think just moving through my dark night took a lot of courage in, just keeping on going. But more importantly, to write the book that I just finished the first real manuscript of was courage, because it's telling you all the things that I did for 3 years that were really, really hard and really, really humiliating, embarrassing, humbling, exciting, challenging. Because when you go through a dark night, everything you thought was real isn't. And everything you think you are, you're not. And you literally have to rediscover yourself from a whole new place. And I think when you talk about midlife with courage, I think that's what happens in midlife, right? In our midlife, we are redefining ourselves. We're recreating ourselves. We're deciding instead of when we're younger, we become who we think we're supposed to be, or we kind of get caught in something, right? We're working at a job and all of a sudden we're working there 20 years later. Like we
Right.
don't we don't actually choose. And as we get older, and if we're willing to take that power that is ours, we must make some choices. And choices, it could be as something as simple as telling your mate no, or your parents you're not coming for Christmas, is a courageous act. So, so instead of thinking of courage as this, big giant thing that really truly, I'm going to move from, Minnesota to Los Angeles, which of course is courageous, but also just every day deciding to make ourselves a priority and to have sovereignty over our lives, having agency over our lives, to honor what we think and what we believe and how we want to show up in the world. That takes great courage.
Yes, it does. And you have, I want to talk more about that, the dark night of your soul. But tell us, where would you like to start with your story? Because you have not always been a master life coach and have helping other people. Where does your story start with what you're doing today?
Well, if we want to talk about how I got to where I am today, we must start with when I was 14 years old. And because without that, I don't think I'd be here. And I believe that the worst days of our lives have the seeds of our destiny. So I'm going to tell you about the worst day of my life, which, of course, in the moment, I don't know it has the seed of my destiny, right? We don't
Right.
see the seeds of our destiny until we're looking backwards, right? But I was 14 years old and I grew up in a little tiny town in Upper Michigan. 365 inches of snow a year.
Oh, Lord.
This year it was snowing. I want to say like April 29th. Okay.
Oh my
This
gosh.
year it got, I think we were up to 320 inches of snow. And when I was there a couple years ago, it was snowing in May.
That's
And
just not right.
I know it's not. I know, but I was there in May and I love snow and I live in LA. So I was walking around town going, "Oh, look, it's snowing." And everyone else is like, "Oh my God, it's May and it's still snowing." And I'm just as happy as can be, right? Because it's
Yeah.
snow. But I grew up in that little tiny town with 365 inches of snow a year. And we had two restaurants, the Douglas House Fancy Buffet Hotel and Big Boy. And my parents were in the middle of getting a divorce. And it was Father's Day. So my father was coming over to take us all to Sunday brunch, my mother, me, and my two sisters. And so my mom's in her bedroom and she's fluffing up her beehive hairdo and putting on her blue eyeshadow and getting her rose colored lipstick out. And my two sisters are in our one bathroom fighting it out. And my dad comes in the back door. "Come on, girls, let's go, let's go, let's go," because that's what dads do. And so me and my mom start walking towards the back door. My sister is still in the bathroom fighting it out. And as we start walking out, it is starting to mist and sprinkle. So my dad says he's got to get his coat from his car, and his coat is a tan Naugahyde leisure suit coat. And if anyone's old enough to remember, tan Naugahyde leisure suit coats looking hot. My father with his plaid shirt and his polyester pants looked good. And so out of the corner of my eye, I notice he's opening his trunk to get his coat, but I notice he's not grabbing a coat and he's grabbing a gun. And he starts yelling at my mother, "You made me do this. You made me do this." And he fires. And so I start screaming, "Dad, what are you doing? Dad, stop. What are you doing?" And he cocks the gun again, points it at me, and I absolutely believe I'm next. I stare at him, he stares at me. It's like we're frozen in space, and he blinks and I blink, and he blinks and I blink, and he blinks and I blink. And my mother, with her literal last breath, screams out, "No, don't." And my father, realizing my mother is still alive, takes that bullet intended for me and shoots my mother a second time.
Mm.
And that second bullet goes through my mother's abdomen out her back and lands in the car horn. And for the next 20 minutes, all we heard was, and then my father cocks the gun a third time, puts the gun to his head and fires. And so in a matter of less than 2 minutes, I was the sole witness of watching my father murder my mother and commit suicide in front of me.
Oh
And
my
I don't know
gosh.
how other people would respond, Kim, but this is how I responded.
Mhm.
It's my fault because I was the only one physically out there that could have stopped it, right? And I didn't kick my father's shins, and I didn't wrestle the gun from him, and I didn't even jump in front of my mother. And so now they're both dead. I'm standing. And in that moment, I like to say I split into two, the outside Rhonda and the inside Rhonda. The outside Rhonda, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I mean, I grew up in Upper Michigan. I'm 100% Finnish. We don't feel, we don't talk about feelings. There's no such thing as fear. There's no such thing as sad. I mean, there's just no feelings, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I sucked it up that moment. I knew I had to suck it up. And I just lived for many, many years that way, pretending I was okay as I went through life. After that happened, like I said, I pretended everything was fine. So still got straight A's, got a scholarship to college, went over to the University of Minnesota from Michigan. And when I went to the University of Minnesota, I was like, nobody knows my story. Nobody knows me. And I discovered alcohol so that I could stuff all that down. And I started drinking, and drinking became a good friend, and I became an alcoholic. And I ended up getting 3 DUIs, and I tried to kill myself 3 times. And it was that third suicide attempt, Kim, that I realized something. I realized I'm not very good at killing myself, not good at it. And there has to be another way. Now, warning for everybody that when you try to kill yourself 3 times, they do put you in a psychiatric ward for evaluation. And so I was put in a psychiatric ward and I was there for about 4 days. And they, put me in a locked ward, had a little straitjacket there just in case.
Oh.
And I remember them telling me, no, you're not crazy. You're just, depressed. You're just grieving. You're just, et cetera, et cetera. So they let me go. And I get to my little apartment. I lived in a studio apartment at the time, little by myself, which, by the way, if you're suicidal, not good to live by yourself in a little
No.
studio apartment. And so I go home and I think to myself, for all those years from the time they died to now, to this third suicide attempt, I had been doing everything that I could to change my life. I had gone to therapy few times. I had read every book. I had gone to workshops. I had gone to, seminars and retreat. I've done everything I could. And I remember sitting home realizing that I had a lot of knowledge, right? I had a lot of knowledge. I knew a lot of things and I had learned a lot of things. Like I had a lot of tools, but none of it was applicable. Like I didn't know how to apply anything. Like people just told me, they didn't show me. They didn't show me how to do it. They just told me things like, well, love yourself more and put yourself
Mm.
first. Okay, like really, you're the important person in your life. It's like, okay, well, you can tell me those things all day. And if I don't know how to do those things, I don't know how to do those things.
Right.
Right. And so I had a lot of knowledge, but I didn't have a lot of application because nobody actually talked about application. And I got to say, very few people do today, even now. They just talk about what you should do, not about how to do it.
Right.
And so I'm sitting home and do you remember ever leaning against the wall when you're a kid and you're sliding down on your butt on the floor, right? You're like,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So I did that. Leaned against my wall in, just utter exasperation, fell down, like fell down on the floor and realized with this knowledge that everything I had done was kind of for naught. I realized that I had to start over. And I remember saying to myself, you got to start over, Rhonda. And I said, well, what do kindergartners do? And well, kindergartners get a gold stars and a calendar. So I actually went to the store, got a calendar with gold stars. And for the next 30 days, I put a gold star on the calendar for anything that I did at all that was good, anything at all. And I
Wow.
still have that calendar, by the way. And I'm talking about things like didn't get drunk or drank and didn't break anything or, got angry and didn't, scream, right? So
Hmm.
that was the level I was at. But at the end of 30 days, I had a calendar filled with gold stars.
Sure.
And that gave me the courage to keep going. And the other thing that I realized that third suicide attempt was if I'm not dying, then I got to figure out how to live because
Mm.
everything I've done until now isn't getting me out of where I am. And so when I got that cold stars and that calendar, it really gave me an opportunity to start thinking myself through of how do I do these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because every time I put a gold star down, I had to do something different, not have a new thought just necessarily, but I had to take an action.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of me starting to understand a little bit more about application rather than just knowledge. It would take me a few more years to really embrace what I now do as fearless living and to actually even admit to myself I was afraid. Because again, where I grew up, there is no fear. And, if you would have said to me, even after my parents died, are you afraid? I would have looked at you like, no. If you would have asked me when I was drinking if I was scared, I would have said no,
Mm-hmm.
because I had no understanding or relationship to those words. They weren't even in my vocabulary, right?
Yeah,
So I had to do the work of unfolding myself and really starting to get comfortable with feelings and eventually discover the feeling called fear.
sure. I totally relate with the Midwestern. We don't talk about fear or we don't talk about feelings.
Say
It's,
no.
and as we get older, we have to deal with feelings because you can't move forward unless you do.
Well, unless, yeah, and a lot of people don't move forward. You and I know a lot of
Yeah,
people don't move forward because
right.
feelings are frightening, right?
Yes.
Because the thing that happens when we start to decide to embrace our feelings is one, we feel alive, right? We feel alive because feelings are energy. And so every time you stuff a feeling, every time you ignore a feeling, every time you pretend you're not having a feeling, you're actually stuffing your energy. So you're like pushing yourself down. So when you start embracing your feelings and honoring your feelings, you have an energy surge, like you literally feel alive.
Hmm.
But the other thing you do, and this is what people are afraid of, is you can start looking back at your life and starting to feel regret. And you can start thinking like, oh my God, I wish I would have done this sooner. Oh my God, I wish I would have known this sooner. I wish I would have, and this is where people decide they don't want to do that. They don't want to regret. They don't want to look back. So then they go, well, I'm not going to feel. What they don't understand is that regret lasts like a quarter of a second because your feeling of aliveness is so exhilarating,
Hmm.
and you feel this surge of energy and this new way of seeing yourself that it gives you a whole new, to be cliche, a new lease on life. Like you literally start seeing yourself differently. So
Yeah.
awareness is key in order to start embracing your feelings and being willing to feel them, to know that those are the pathway out of your fear and your sameness and your stuckness.
Hmm. So as you're going through this process of realizing that, how long did it, I mean, it's a process, it takes time. How long did it take you to kind of, I mean, it's never a like,
Yeah,
oh,
never
everything's
done. Never
perfect
done.
right
Yeah, never
now.
done.
I'm just thinking of other women listening who might be in that situation or a similar situation where, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm never going to be able to get out of this. Maybe talk a little bit about how long that takes and what's involved a little
Well, I
bit.
don't think so this is the cool thing about transformation. This is a cool thing about changing. This is a cool thing about making new choices. You start feeling differently immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that you decide that you're not going to go to Thanksgiving at your in-laws, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you go, no, I really want to do it at my house this year, right? And that's against all family tradition, right?
Ooh.
Like, oh my God. I remember the first time I told my sisters I wasn't coming to their house for Thanksgiving, and they're like, what? Right? How dare you? Like this is family, and I was coming back from actually London, and I was completely exhausted. I'd come back like November 15th or 20th, and I had been working 3 months, 7 days a week, and I was literally exhausted. And I told my sisters, I go, literally cannot get on the plane. I'm so exhausted.
Yeah.
And my sisters were like, what? But then they were willing to have empathy and compassion for me, right?
Yeah.
And me telling my sisters I'm not coming, to ramp up to saying that took courage.
Mm-hmm.
But once I said it, I immediately had more confidence. And I
Yeah.
immediately had more trust in what I needed. And I immediately know who I was more. So
Yeah.
it doesn't take long to start getting the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally one decision at a time. So
Sure.
whether the decision is I'm going to go to the movie or I'm not going to go to the movie, or I'm going to call them back or I'm not going to call them back, or I want to wear something different, or I don't really like Mexican food. I'd rather go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Instead of just going along to get along, starting to actually ask yourself what it is that you need and what is it that you want, And what is it that you like? I know that for me, asking myself during this process, I went through about 3 months of every day asking myself what I like. And that was mind blowing. My favorite color was green because my boyfriend in kindergarten's favorite color was green, and I just never changed it. And my favorite food was Mexican because my ex-husband's favorite food was Mexican. I never even chose those for myself. I never even,
Wow.
and if you would have asked me at the time if I would have chosen it, I'd been like, yeah, sure. But
Uh,
looking back, it's like, no, I actually never did choose that. No.
yeah.
So it really is a really great assignment to start doing is what I did. And I started asking myself every day, because as I started to move through a healing process and take my power back, I started asking myself every day, do I like this?
Hmm.
Do I like this? Do I like this shirt? Do I like these glasses? Do I like these earrings? Do I like the way my hair is? Do I like this? Drink it out of a mason jar? Do I like this? Do I like, and I literally asked myself all day long for about 3 months what I liked. And my immediate good girl response was like, well, of course. And I was like, no, no, do you really like it? It's like, hmm, actually, not so much. Not so much. I don't really like those sheets. I don't really like that comforter. I've had these towels for 30 years, you know, right? Right. So it's really about being willing to explore yourself.
Yeah.
And so it is, you start feeling immediate benefits immediately. You start getting surges of energy, you start feeling more whole onto yourself, you start feeling that you belong to yourself, and you start feeling that sovereignty and agency, and that builds on itself.
Sure. And that's something I've been trying to, that's my passion for the women listening is, look inside yourself. You've got what you need to flourish and, you're beautiful the way you are and all these wonderful
They don't
messages.
believe that,
They
right? But
don't know it.
no, no, but they don't believe it. They don't know it because, again, they need to hear all those things, just like they need to hear things from me. Like they need to read those books and they need to
Yeah.
listen to YouTube videos and they need to do all that to kind of retrain their brain. But the only way it'll sink in is for them to make a decision.
Ah.
So I can tell you all day long, you're beautiful. And it will, it'll start seeping in little bit by little bit, right? People that
Hmm.
listen to you each and every day, get seeped in, and that's important. But then it's going to get to the point where they're going to have to do something different. They're going to have to decide. They're going to have to make a choice. And every time we make a choice, every time we decide, we're actually forming our identity. We're actually creating who we are.
Hmm.
So every time, every day, all day long, we're making decisions. And all of those decisions, no matter how small, are creating our opinion of ourselves. So every day, all day long, you can make a different choice. And it can be something as simple as what you're going to make for dinner. Could literally be the beginning of your change, right?
Sure.
You saying, no, I really am not interested in going to lunch could be the beginning of your transformation. So it doesn't have to be this big thing about, I'm going to quit my job or, I'm going to move or, I'm going to dye my hair orange. No, it doesn't have to be any of those things.
Yeah.
Literally saying, do I like this? You know, going through your closet and actually asking yourself, do I like this? And do I feel amazing in this? If you don't, then, unless it's used for gardening or, or, or building snowmen, maybe you need to get rid of some of those clothes.
Sure.
So it's about our daily choices.
I love that. And that's how you started out. Like when you said you gave yourself gold stars for
Yep.
little things that you did. And it's perfect. Like that's wonderful. I love how that worked for you. And I know it can work for other people too.
And my clients do it. I mean, and I don't even, I do VIP days and VIP weekends with the clients. And I just came back from Florida and my client didn't assign this to her, but she knows about the gold stars. And she literally made cardboard stars. And on every star, she wrote down the decision she had made that was different for her. And she
Uh,
just like pulled them all out and put them on the kitchen counter. And, I was like, yes. And that's exactly how you do it.
yeah, I love that. Because it feels so good. Like if you do something different and for yourself,
Yeah.
you're doing this for yourself. And
Yeah.
that's what's
Well,
important.
that you include yourself in your own life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most women don't include themselves in their own life.
Hmm.
So they don't even think of what they like or want. They're just
Yeah.
in duty mode or in I better mode or it's too late for me mode or I'm too old for me mode or I'm too something for me mode or they need me mode. and
Yeah.
not at all about, well, wait a minute, what do I want and what do I need? What turns me on? What makes me happy?
Right.
For most people, that's not even a thought.
Right. I know a lot of women, they spent their whole life helping others or doing for other people. They get married, they have kids,
Yeah.
maybe they had a career and so yeah, it's tough to turn your mind around to thinking, no, wait, what about me? But do you find that women in midlife, 35, 40 over kind of get to that point where they're kind of
Yes.
starting to think like, oh, wait a second.
Yes, I have to say, I cannot tell you how many people, how many women become certified fearless living life coaches when they turn 40. I can't even tell you. I had one woman, we used to have a physical office in Boulder, Colorado, and a woman, and it wasn't like open to the public, it was just our office.
Hmm.
And a woman, looked up our address and drove to Boulder. She lived in Denver. She drove to Boulder. She showed up at our door, and it was her 40th birthday. And she goes, if I don't sign up now, I'm never going to do it. I got to sign up now. And we're like, okay, sure, but that's the thing. It's like at that 40, I think we all have that thing. I remember saying to myself, when I'm 40, I'm going to be like this, right? And then when you turn 40 and you're not that, and you're like, holy crap, your life turned out better, it turned out worse, it turned out the same, it turned out something.
Hmm.
But when you're 40, that is like that moment in time. I think it's a big line for many people. I think it's 40, I think it's 50, I think it's 55 and 60, right? So there's those key moments in our lives. And at 40, I think we start going, wait a minute, I don't know if I like where this is going. Or I don't like this part of it. Or I love this part, but I'm not sure about this part, right? But so yeah, I definitely think 40 is when women specifically start waking up.
Yeah. So let's kind of bring that fear back into this because I have found in my personal journey when I think, oh, I want to do this, but something happened, or I think, oh, I can't, or I shouldn't. I'm thinking that's fear right there.
It is.
Okay. So what do we
Yes, it
do
is.
about that? And you help people do that. You help people
Well,
overcome
first
their
of all,
fear,
let's
right?
let's like let's yes, I do. That's my whole deal because I believe that fear is at the crux of every time that we are less than who we're meant to be. So I want to give you a little quiz because
Uh-oh.
most people like me, I never use the word fear or scared, right? Or
Mhm.
afraid. I never use those words. And I think that's true for most people. I don't think most people walk around going, I'm afraid or I'm scared, right?
Mhm.
But we do walk around saying other things. And so, what I'd love to do is give a little quiz for those people who are listening. If you can shut your eyes, if you're safe in a safe place to shut your eyes, please do. If you're driving, please don't.
Please
And
don't.
and then if you're able and you can shut your eyes, go ahead and nod your head when I'm reading these words to you. If you do any of these things or feel any of these things, so if you do any of these things or feel any of these things, go ahead and nod your head. Okay, you ready, Kim? You ready?
I'm okay, yep.
Okay, come on, Kim. Are you going to play along?
I'm gonna
Yeah.
play along. I'll shut
Okay.
my
All right,
eyes.
Kim. Here we go. Do you ever isolate yourself? Do you ever pretend everything's okay when it's not? Do you ever hide out? Do you ever whine? Do you ever compare? Do you ever settle? Do you ever secretly manipulate? Do you get defensive? Do you judge? Do you complain? Do you procrastinate? How about wait and call it patience? Do you ever blame yourself? Do you ever worry? Do you ever feel like you're struggling? Do you ever feel like you're got to get that control? What about deflect? Do you ever feel bitter, powerless? Do you ever feel like a perfectionist or a people pleaser? Do you ever feel disappointed, entitled, guilty? What about irritated, like now? What about ignored, overwhelmed, get caught in self pity? What about annoyed or victimized? All right, go ahead and open your eyes, Kim. And what percentage did you have? Tell the truth.
Oh, it was probably like 95% of all of
Okay,
that.
perfect. Yeah, yeah, perfect. So when I speak to groups, whether it's 1,000 people or 100 people, I would say over 95% have over 95%.
Hmm.
And I would dare say 99% have
Wow.
100%. So when I ask people to raise their hand and they're brave, most people stand up or raise their hand.
Hmm.
And so this is the language of fear. We don't walk around saying I'm afraid or I'm scared,
Right.
but we do walk around and say I'm procrastinating, or we catch ourselves judging, or we catch ourselves, feeling irritated, right?
Sure.
You can't procrastinate unless there's a fear under there. You won't feel overwhelmed unless there's a fear under there. You
Right.
will not beat yourself up or blame somebody else unless you have a fear under there. You won't manipulate or judge or get defensive unless there's a fear under there.
Mm-hmm.
So most people, look at their lives and they look at these symptoms, what I call the symptoms of fear, the fear responses. These fear responses, they think are their problems and they think they're character flaws. And they think, well, if I could just change these things about me, my life would be better. If I just quit procrastinating, if I just quit people,
Ah,
right? If I just quit getting overwhelmed, if I just quit judging, I want to be a better person. I just got to quit judging myself and others. I just got to quit working on. I got to work on that. I got to have more patience. God, I'm so right. And
yeah.
so we talk to ourselves about these qualities and what these really are fear responses. So one of the first things that I ask my clients to do is start relabeling and reframing their problems, any of these words, as fear responses. So they can start creating a space between them and how they're showing up in the world, how they see themselves, create a space because in that space, they can become the observer rather than being covered up and adult, like all covered up with them, right? Believe that's
Mm-hmm.
who they are. They can create a separation between their behavior, their thoughts, et cetera, than who they really are, right?
Right.
So when you procrastinate, you say, oh, that's not me. That's a fear response. Huh. What do I do instead? Well, you'd get on your wheel of freedom because I created a wheel of fear and wheel of freedom. So these fear responses are all on your wheel of fear. So, but just relabeling them, just starting to relabel them, to reframe them will literally immediately change your life because you're no longer judging yourself or blaming yourself for these things.
Right.
Instead, you're like, wait a minute, I'm doing this because I must be afraid.
Yeah.
Yes, you had an insight. Come on, give it, girl.
Well, it's just you're giving yourself permission to say no, this isn't because I think sometimes when we react a certain way, it's oh, that's just how I am. But if
Yes,
you say no, that's a reaction to this other thing, then the attention goes to that other thing. And then if you have that cause, I mean, that's your cause, your root cause, then you can
yeah,
do something about it.
that's right. And so we want to actually relabel these fear responses as fear responses and quit labeling them as problems or character flaws or, character defects. And definitely in the world of fearless living, there's no beating yourself up. So that's the first thing that we take away from you because beating yourself up is like the oil on the wheel of fear. It just oils that wheel of fear and just keeps going around and around and around and around and around. And by the way, beating yourself up is you pouring the oil on the wheel of fear. You're participating in that. You're saying, oh, let me
Sure.
beat myself up some more. And though, by the way, that's just going to keep my wheel of fear in place. So we
Yeah.
actually want to stop that and go, wait a minute, no, I'm going to see my innocence here. I didn't purposely do these things to me. I didn't purposely do these things to anyone else. I didn't purposely put myself in this place. I didn't purposely, from an evil intent, do this. No, you didn't. You just don't understand the wheel of fear and wheel of freedom. And oh, by the way, neither did I. And by the way, neither did my father, and neither did my mother.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. If you could see a light bulb right now above my head, it would be just going ding, 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 ding.
That's good. Yay. That's
Yes,
good.
that's amazing. So, talk a little bit about you've mentioned your books and you have clients. So, how if people are listening and they're having that light bulb moment along with me, how would they find you? How would you help them?
Well, first of all, go over to fearlessliving.org/risk, RISK, because I am going to give everyone who's listening or watching a free course. And it is called Stretch, Risk, or Die. Because as we've been talking today, Kim, to make a new choice, to even say, I'm not coming over for Thanksgiving, or to say no to something, or to change your mind, or decide your favorite color isn't green, but it's blue.
Mhm.
That is what I call a stretch, risk, or die because you're doing something different.
Mhm.
And stretch, risk, or die is one of my clients' very, very favorite exercises. It really, if you have a goal, a dream, something you want to accomplish, stretch, risk, and die is going to totally take away that procrastination. And you're going to see why you're not taking action. It's going to be so evident and so clear to you. You're going to be like, oh, wow, I didn't see that. It's like a bing, like your light bulb moment. You're going to have a light bulb about this. So go over to fearlessliving.org/risk, RSK. You're going to put your name and email in. You're going to get access to my platform, my Fearless You platform, and you're going to get access to the course. And it's three 15-minute videos, three 15-minute videos. That's all.
Mhm.
And in those three 15-minute videos, the last video actually has me breaking down the wheel of fear. So then you can see my wheel of fear in action. So you can get all the components and so you can see how it works. So then you can start perhaps applying it to yourself.
I
So go
love
over to
that.
fearlessliving.org/risk, RISK. So that's where to find me. And then you said how to work with me
Sure.
is, there's a couple different ways. One is read my book, right? Fearless
Yeah.
Living. If you're somebody who is a reader and that's how you like to learn and that's your first step, great. Go get Fearless Living. You can get it anywhere. And the next thing to do is if you are wanting to take more action, like you're like that woman who showed up at my office when she was 40 and said, I've got to do it now, right? Well, then go over to fearlessliving.org and look under Get Coached. And there's a class called Fearless Living Transformation Program. And it is my program to help you find your wheel of fear, more importantly, find your wheel of freedom, and give you the tools and the steps to take you from where you are to where you want to go. So that's the most important class you can take with me is Fearless Living Transformation Program. And then
Love
the
it.
last way to work with me is to hire a coach, hire a certified Fearless Living coach. Of course, hire me, but work with somebody, whether it's a private VIP day or whether it's coaching over time, et cetera, how you'd like to work. But
Yeah.
I always like to think that we have things for how much time you have or how much money you have. It
Sure.
doesn't matter. We need to have something for everybody.
Yeah. I think it's important. It's so important work that you're doing. So thank you. And thank you for sharing your story as well. I think that was, it's hard to share those stories, I bet, with other people, but you really have turned it into, I don't want to say a good thing, but just helping other
Well,
people.
I think that the more that we're willing to share our imperfections and our times when we were not at our best, the more that we can actually give other people permission to do it. Because when I first started being a coach and started speaking, I didn't tell my story. I
Mm-hmm.
never told my story. I remember a friend of mine who was actually a speaking coach. She was like, "Hey, Rhonda, you need to start telling your story." And I went, "Nobody wants to hear that stupid story. Nobody wants to hear about my father murdering my mother. Like nobody wants to hear that." And she told me, she's like, "Yeah, they do." And I go, "No, they don't. No, they don't." And I really believed that. For 2 years when I spoke, I didn't tell my story.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually dared me one day to tell it.
Uh,
I'm a good Midwest girl, so don't dare me because I'm gonna do
watch
it,
it.
right? Right? I'm gonna do it. So I said, okay. So I had two back-to-back speaking events for the same type of audience, two women audiences, two conferences. And so one audience, I went, gave my talk, didn't tell my story. And afterwards, I had about three people in line waiting to talk to me. It's kind of average.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went a few days later and gave another talk, same talk, except this time I told my story, but I told it really poorly. I basically said, my father killed my mother, killed himself, and there you go. And that's basically all I did because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to say, I didn't know what I was doing, right? And I did it really poorly and really bad. And at the end of the talk, I had a line around the block.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I had no idea. I had no idea. And so that is how I learned that telling about our worst days of our lives give people permission to believe not only that there's hope or that there's a way out, but that they too have permission to have bad days and they too have permission to change.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And that's why I do this podcast. I focus on the stories so that other women can hear them and know that very same thing. Well,
Yeah.
she went through that. I can do what I need to do. So,
Yes.
yes.
Yes, you
Awesome.
can. Yes.
Yes.
I've seen people change. I've seen situation people change and you know, I don't care. I've had women come to us when they're 65 years old. I've had women come to us when they were 72. I had a guy
Wow.
come last year that was in his 80s, right?
Wow.
So it doesn't matter how old you are.
Mm-mm.
It's that you do not want to end up, I'm going to go backwards. There was a book written, which I'm sure you're aware of, The Top Five Regrets. A nurse had kept track of people's, regrets that she
Yeah.
asked them on their deathbeds. She was a
Mhm.
hospice nurse. So she asked them on their deathbeds what their greatest regret was. And pretty much everybody's greatest regret is that I didn't live my life, that I didn't live the life that I was supposed to live. And so that is really our call as human beings is are we here to really truly live the life that we were destined to live, that we are destined, that is our job, that is why we came, or we are going to avoid it. We're going to just keep avoiding it.
Mhm.
And, our call is to be the person that we were born to be. And the way we do that is by taking stretch, risk, or dies.
Yeah, I love that. So, listeners, go to her website, grab that Stretch, Risk, or Die. and let us know what you think about it. And yeah, I love this conversation. I just want to keep going and talking to you more, but I know we can't do that. So before we do say goodbye, is there any one last little nugget of information you want to share with the listeners? Any advice?
Yeah, this is the last thing I want you to hear. And if everybody, whoever can, put your hand on your heart, we'll do something. We'll do the corny thing about the hand on the heart. And we'll take a nice deep breath. We'll do all this corny stuff, right? Which I love. We're going to just take a nice deep breath. And I want you to listen to the words I'm about to say. And I want you just to take them into your heart as deep as you're willing. Nice deep breath in. There is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. It's just fear. There is nothing wrong with you. It's just fear. There is nothing wrong with you. It's just fear. Let that melt over your beingness. Let that just melt over you. Because what that's going to do is melt away the shame and the blame and the regret and the excuses, because there is nothing wrong with you. It's just fear. Take a nice deep breath in. Yeah, and use that as your mantra today. There's nothing wrong with me. It's just fear.
I'm going to write that in a big sign over my computer in my planner.
Yeah.
All right. Rhonda, thank you so much. This has been so lovely, and thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Be fearless, everyone.